You're listening to Bible Truth Feed, a podcast by christadelphianvideo.org for Christadelphians and all those seeking the truth about the Bible message. Join us now as we present our latest episode.
Alvin and Cindy have 6 children who have either been through or are currently still in their teenage years, so they're well qualified to talk about teenage experience. Alvin was just saying to us that 5 of them are girls and 1 is a boy. That adds up to 6, so that's sort of good. And so there's way too much emotion in his family, he reckons. 3 of the children are married and 3 others are in relationships. So they've had a lot of experience there as well. They have 5.8 grandchildren. You can explain that later if you like. And Cindy has an amazing hobby, and her hobby is to collect teenagers and young adults. And so right now they have 8 young people at home with them. So welcome to Cindy and Alvin. Good to have you here.
Thanks for that. Yes, we've got a pretty big bubble at the moment, that's for sure. Although that sort of thing's just been relaxed somewhat, but at the moment we've managed to shoo all of the teenagers out of the room here because we might have to talk about some of them a bit later on, you know. But it's good to be here, Robert. It really is. Pretty good summation. Thanks.
Cool. Anything else you want to add to that?
Oh, well, over the last 4 or 5 weeks, is it? 5 weeks, we've had a pretty interesting time overall. It's been not so hard, I guess, with us because our bubble's reasonably big. It expands over a couple of different places, so we often go over to Sam and that's. We've got a wee bit of land over there, and we've got some horses there. So consequently, the teenagers and the kids can, go between the places, and there's things to do. It would have been a lot more difficult if we were all shut up at home.
So just in passing, 3 of the 6 teenagers or 6 young people we have in the house, there's 3 relationships amongst that the 8 we've got. So 3 relationships, and that keeps us busy as well. Or keeps me busy.
Absolutely. We'll come back to that later. In the meantime, what's it like to have had 6 children with 6 different personalities? Like, how did you adapt for each one of them?
Well, that's
actually 6 different personalities. We've got 4, and they've got, and we. I didn't know you could have 4 opposites, but you can. But you've got 6.
Yeah, it's true. I can tell you, we've almost got 6. We've only got the oldest and the youngest. And I see Samantha's watching on at the moment, but Samantha and Jenny are probably reasonably close in personality. But the rest are as different as chalk and cheese. And it's been a really interesting task because you have to adjust your style somewhat. And Cindy's a bit of an expert in that. So
you do have to balance them. You have to balance them out quite a bit. We have 2 that are extremely competitive. So we have to try and balance them out. We have 1 that's more inclined to take offence at things. So you have to make sure that you can handle that as well. And the oldest and the youngest were probably the more easygoing of them. And 1's just a dreamer. She just dreams away her life quite happily. So.
The dream is very easy.
Yeah, the dream did not teenagership at all. We have never had to worry about that. She explodes every now and then, but most of the time she just gets on with life and does whatever's needed to be done. So she's been our easiest child, really.
So just taking a step back, when we were chatting with the other night, we were talking about how the parenting part really starts back in the preteen years. So to have adapted and balanced 10 years, when you need to start with your parenting skills way back preteen. So do you want to talk us a little bit through that?
Yeah, sure. What you're saying is exactly right. As you said, that's what we talked about. But right from an early stage to us anyway, and what seems to have worked for us pretty well is we set, reasonable boundaries on the kids. They know pretty much what they could do and what they couldn't. And we also made the meeting very much a part of our lives. So if you want to bring your kids up, to love God, then you have to show that God's important in your own life. You know what I mean? And so we attended, attendance to meetings and Bible classes and Bible camps and things, which we'll talk about a bit about later on. It was very important, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, so the very first thing you've got to have is boundaries at a very young age. And if your children have got boundaries that you can, they'll bounce against all the time, but you've got to try and maintain those boundaries, and they slightly grow and you give them a bit more as they get older. But through that, you're also asking them to respect you. You want them to respect you because it's the respect they have for you and the respect they have for God that's going to carry them through the difficult teenage years. So the more respect they have for you and the more respect they have for God, the less likely they are to stray completely, hopefully. I mean, you can't guarantee anything, but that's what you're aiming for. So they don't want to go off the rails because they respect mum and dad and they respect God, and so they don't want to look bad. They don't want to do the wrong thing. So it's that respect that's going to carry you right through, and that starts from a very young age. The boundaries and working on the love and respect. And that's not where you're harsh or you're making things too hard for them, but neither are you too easy so that they don't have any boundaries at all. You've got to have that balance.
So that's what's worked for us.
Yeah, so say you got 10-year-olds and you got lots of girls. So say you got 10-year-old girls. What sort of boundaries would you put for, what sort of boundaries would you place for a 10-year-old girl? As you're heading into those teenage years, you're heading into all the changes from 10 years old.
For me, a lot of it would be around respect. I think for listening to you, being a part of the family, doing the chores that they need to do, starting to advance into more things that they can do to help around the family, but all the way through, hopefully, working on how they talk to you and how they act around you, so that they're listening to you and they're respecting what you're saying. And you will always have bouncing against that. They're always going to push at you to not do that, but you've got to try and maintain that respect. You aren't going to be their friend. You're going to be their mum and their dad.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to maintain.
One of our daughters, the one we were talking about, that actually, she was could be a bit interesting at times. She would, for example, if she wanted to get my attention and I was doing something, she said, Dad, Alvin. And, I'm not Alvin, I'm Dad. So she knew how to get my attention and push boundaries, sort of thing,
And on another level of that, it was interesting today. I was actually having a conversation with Samantha's midwife, because I happened to be over at Samantha's place when her midwife arrived. And she's got a 14-and-a-half-year-old. And she says, I can't get her to do anything. I can't get her to listen. She just does whatever she wants. And my problem is that John, that's her husband, is not on the same page with her. And this is absolutely crucial. You have to be on the same page as parents. I mean, you're not always going to agree, and sometimes you might have arguments about how you're going to end up dealing with the children. But overall, you have to be on the same page with your expectations. And because she wasn't, she had no control of her child. Her child just went to Dad.
Go to Dad, yeah. Yeah, they play one off against another.
So it's really crucial. So it's really crucial as a husband and wife, or as a father and mother, to have those same values and those same principles for building your kids' lives, so that you're on the same page, and to be communicating and loving each other, so that your kids can't force their way in between and split you apart, really, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
very strong.
And if they know, they can get something out of Dad that they won't get out of Mum, trust me, they'll try Dad. So even if I don't always agree with what Cindy does, or more to the point, Cindy doesn't agree to what I do, somewhere along the line, make sure that you back up your.
There was something that you said just before, I think it was Robert, about communication. And so we've talked about boundaries, about respect.
Yeah.
Part of that young years is actually communicating with your children. It's getting that conversation going all the time. Talk them through things. In the earlier years, you're going to say you do it or else, or you however you're going to do it in the early years. But over time, you want to discuss more with them why they do something, why you want them to do something, and what they should be doing. And so you keep that communication all the time, so that over time they'll come to you with their issues or their problems. And I was thinking about it the other day when I was talking to you, I still remember when Richard was at home, our only son, and he was, you know, 15 and 16 years old, 17 and 18 even, and he would sometimes just knock on the bedroom door and walk in and waltz in and sit on the floor and chat for an hour or two. And that often happened in our lives. He would just walk in. The girls would do it automatically. It was kind of expected with the girls, but to have it with the 16, 17-year-old boy was really quite precious. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's actually another thing. Sorry, Robert, if I can just add to that.
Yeah, go for it.
When you have conversations with your kids, quite often it's fair to say that if you sit somebody down and say, right, I'm going to have a talk with you, blah, 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 the conversation was much. Today I went for a bike ride with Jen, and Jenny's my youngest. She's 18 years old, and we rode for 40 k's. As I get older, you know, my chest slipped a wee bit, and I'm getting the hard word from the doctor because my blood pressure's up a wee bit. So biking seems to be the way to go. So we went for a 40k ride today, and she chatted all the way around. I haven't had such a good conversation with her for probably weeks, you know. So if you get an opposite, you know, we talked about a, you know, a trip in the car or something like that. You know, something where you can keep your eyes on the road or something like that, and they can just, I'm having a father-daughter conversation with you, or whatever. It's just like
It's just a chat.
It's just a chat, and it works really well.
So you're not sitting across the table from each other, eye to eye, but you're sitting beside each other, doing something together.
Yeah.
That's the best chats. Yeah.
So we're talking about building relationships between the parents and the children. So what are some more keys that you would suggest for building strong relationships? What does it even look like?
Well, it's got to be based on trust and respect, I think it'd be fair to say. You know, you want them to trust you. You've got to show that you trust them as well. And respect goes two ways as well, but you're still dad and mum, you know what I mean?
It's the communication. Building the strong relationship with them is when it comes to a point where later on in life where they get a partner, like we've got here, we've built the communication respect enough for them to know that there are certain things that they should do that will help them to get through those months before they get married. When they've got problems at school, you're talking to them about their problems at school, but you're understanding why they have problems. You draw back on when you were a child, which might seem like last century to them, but you can remember what it was like.
It was last century.
And it actually was
last millennium, actually.
You draw on that, and you remember what it was like for you, and don't brush off their concerns, so that you can build on that relationship, and you can understand, they can understand it, you understand how they feel.
If your son or daughter feels they can come up and chat with you about things, that makes things a hang of a lot easier. What I will say, and I see Sammy, my oldest daughter, who's now 30 years old. Actually, I don't know if I should have said that. Now I'm probably in trouble. But one of the good things is that now that she's a bit older as well, the girls will often go, and even Richard will often go and sometimes open up to Sam as well, and that's a really good thing. I think that's quite a special thing to be able to have as well. But of course, that only applies, you know, when you've got older children. But if you have somebody else within the meeting or something like that they feel comfortable with, that can be quite useful as well. Yeah.
But then that whole, I mean, she's 30 now, but that whole training ground happened when she was 10 and when she was 20, whatever it was, when she got married. So, you know, that whole training ground was what was happening inside your house. That grew her to become that woman that can be a listening ear for someone else. So that's really awesome.
So that led me on to something which we hadn't actually discussed the other day. And that was about sibling rivalry or sibling arguments, which of course are going to happen all the time. And especially in their teenage years, because in teenage years, you're often a little bit competing with each other. Somebody might have a boyfriend, the other, or a girlfriend, the other one might not. And so there's a little bit of competition going on. And we found that, you know, you had to actually talk. So the early years, I was thinking about it and I was talking to Samantha about it. So she says it was before they were teens. But I mean, I remember making them sit down and hold hands and sing You Are My Sunshine. which was very interesting because I read in a book in a Christian bookstore later on that you never sit your children down and make them hold hands and sing "You Are My Sunshine," which is kind of freaky. But yeah, when Richard and Kelly were being very naughty, this is when they were younger. I was driving to Gore, and they were just fighting.
I wasn't there.
No, he wasn't there. And in the end, I put them out of the car, made them hold hands, and I drove the car for 1 kilometre, and they had to walk in front of the car on the side of the road. And every time they dropped hands, I beat the horn at them till they did it.
This is State Highway 1 for crying out loud.
Try and get them to do that. But actually, in the end, what we did was we spent a lot of time getting the kids to talk to each other and be friends with each other, which helped because we were homeschooling. But they spent a lot of time talking to each other. And if one of them was fighting with the other, often we would sit and say, you've got to understand how your sibling is. And I still do that today with them. You've got to understand what they're going through. You've got to think about why they may be upset and give them a bit of slack because they're going through a few issues right now that are troublesome for them. And get them to think the outcome of that, talking to them, is that in all 3 marriages so far, they had largely their siblings as their bridal party. And I know with the younger ones, it'll be very similar. In fact, one of my daughters said the other day, she said, you can have friends come and go, but my siblings are going to be there forever. And that's who she wants in her wedding party.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so
really
the siblings
good.
are very, very close.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So
that's good.
Yeah. So just going back a step, we talked about boundaries and things before and things you do around the house, and you mentioned chores, Cindy. How do you go, or what's the balance between getting teens to work around the house and allowing them to do their own thing? Because that could be like, some teens just want to sit in their room. Other teens want to, are really willing to help. But yeah, and often there's that sort of like, oh, do I have to,
When the kids were early teens, again, because I homeschooled them, they had jobs every day that they each had to do, and they had turnabouts. So one would do the lounge, one would do the kitchen, one would do the corridor, one would do the bathroom stuff, and then the next week they turn it around. That doesn't always work exceptionally well because if they left it for that week, the next one would get double load. So, you had to sort of balance things all the time on that. We introduced things like them cooking meals. Even Richard was required to do some cooking.
Change the order around the chores as well, so there would be a bit of variety there.
Yeah, you change the order at times too. But it's really getting them to contribute to the family where mum isn't having to do everything. And that they learn what they've got to do later on when they've got to start their own families. So you've got to balance that with schoolwork and their own free time. If you're asking them too much, they'll let you know. If you're not asking them enough, then if they're fighting in their bedrooms or being stupid, then you say, right, well, I've got a job for you, and get them back involved.
It really does work.
It works. We've got, almost as effective as holding your hands and walking down the road.
We've got quite a number of teenagers in the house at the moment, and we had but over the last month, we've had to introduce jobs and
I've always had
rosters because you quite often we'd have a say the dog would rip into the rubbish or something like that, and then the boys who live in the cottage out the back would sort of walk past it, and be there the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And feel like you shouldn't have to put the hard word on them. So effectively, we've just rostered them now. So and it works.
Don't be afraid to change your rosters. So I started off with these are going to do this job and these are going to do this job, but because they're doing school and they're doing work and they're doing various other things, that didn't work. So then I tried doing, if everybody contributes for half an hour in the house, that's fine, just half an hour. But half an hour is not half an hour for the teenagers. 10 minutes is more than enough. So in the end, what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to divide the family, 8 of you, up into 2 groups and 3 groups, one group of 3, another group of 3, and another group of 2. And after every meal, you take your turn at doing the dishes. And I found that's worked out exceptionally well. They get in the kitchen, they do the dishes, they laugh, they carry on, they work away together, and they know they don't have to do it for 3 more days. And that's a huge help to the family.
And sometimes the girls will be cooking the tea and the boys will be doing the dishes. So they choose dishes for dinner, you know, that create mountains.
They did that one night.
They decided to punish the boys.
So I think on that night they used every dish in the cupboard just to annoy them. But our girls will do cooking. The boys will at times. The boys cooked us on lockdown. We were very fortunate on lockdown. We had Eden and Rosie did a wonderful progressive dinner for us.
It was just awesome.
So we started in the garage and went to the kitchen, dining, and then the hallway, and then the lounge. Finished up in the lounge with 4 courses and games in between. And then Rosie and Rhiannon the following week did a Passover meal for us.
Passover.
And then the week after that, myself and 3 of the girls did a curry night. So we did an Indian night, and the boys did a burger night one night. So we've been very fortunate. We just rope them in and say, and I was talking to this midwife about it today. She says, I wanted my daughter to do a meal. So I've said, you've got to do a meal in the next 2 weeks. I said, it won't work. You say Thursday night is your night. You do Thursday night. You figure out what you need to make. You figure out your recipe. I'll make sure you've got the ingredients, and then you can do cooking on that night. And that's what we do. They write on the fridge what they need for ingredients, and we get the ingredients when we're doing the shopping, which is Danielle at this case, because she's working at Pack and Save. She does the shopping every day or every second day, and they know what night they're doing the dinner. So tonight Jenny made fettuccine, shrimp fettuccine. Tomorrow night I think Rhiannon's booked in for ribs. And the next night is Alvin's birthday, and he's asked for a curry. So I think I'm on that one.
Awesome.
Okay. So essentially what you've done is you've made family chores sound like fun. I mean, it actually I almost feel like going down there just to do the dishes because it sounds like fun.
The fact is they actually get on quite well when they're working together and interacting, you know, even if it's around the dishes. They still actually have fun and they chat, and you hear a lot of laughter and stuff like that, and that's because they get on really, really well. I think we mentioned, I hope I'm not jumping the gun here, we don't encourage a lot of our teenagers or our kids for that matter, when they were younger, to do a lot in their bedrooms. Like, we prefer to have them out here. So for example, at the moment, teenage nights, when they're out here, they're often playing cards or putting together a board game or something like that. Or if you know, for example, Rosie and Eden want to be together and spend a bit of time, they'll be over at the table putting together a jigsaw or something along those lines, you know. But again, we do see a lot of laughter, a lot of fun, and a lot of interaction, and that sort of thing helps.
And we've been fortunate, I mean, no arguments in the last 4 weeks really at all. The kids spent very little time in their bedrooms. That's been something that both Alvin and I have strongly encouraged, that we don't really want them spending too much time in their bedrooms. So they as a tendency, they do their studying somewhere in the lounge room area, which is quite good. So they're somewhere around. When you were going to ask, you were talking about relationships before, because we've got 3 sets of couples in the house. Well, Eden's in his own house, but he visits regularly.
Extended bubble.
Yeah, extended bubble. So we make the rule right from the beginning that no boys and girls bedrooms and vice versa, which has meant that they have to kind of be somewhere nearby.
And a couple of times we've had to lean on, well, I've had to lean on certain.
Yeah, not really amongst this lot.
No, not amongst this lot, but previous, you know.
Previous times,
so,
yeah. There's been occasions, but mostly they're pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only Nat didn't want to, actually, he was not supposed to go in Samantha's bedroom or anything, but that was fine. But he fell through the roof just outside her bedroom, which was a bit suspicious.
So, yeah. One leg either side of a parallel bird. Actually, surprised we've got grandkids.
So just working on that relationships thing, because that's quite an important one. How, apart from staying outside your bedroom, you know, well, no boys and girls bedrooms. Any other thoughts on navigating relationships with teens?
Again, it comes back to your earlier preparation.
Trust.
Your earlier preparation has to be one that builds on boundaries and respect, and then trust. Yeah. So we don't make a lot of rules. We don't run around checking after our children all the time, but they know that we can walk in their bedroom at any time. We'll just walk in, basically, just maybe not walk in, or might just walk in. They'll know we're coming in. And so there's a lot of trust involved here, and not a lot of checking. We don't run around and say, you've got to show us your phone, you've got to show us this or that, but we will talk to them about music, for example, and say, are you sure you're listening to the right music for the right reasons? You need to probably check your music list and make sure you're not listening to things you shouldn't be. Are you watching the right stuff? Should you be watching that sort of thing? You need to think about what you're watching. But then it comes back to trust. Nowadays, with devices in bedrooms, you cannot control everything people do unless you take it off them. So in that case, you have to build the trust early, and the boundaries and the respect early.
And the expectations. They know what we expect, and they also know what we see as right and wrong as well. So
Yeah.
And also, it's like with their own siblings. It's fair to say that if you know something happened, you know, they would know that they would disappoint their siblings' expectations as well. So, you know, so far, you know, praise, thank the Lord, everything's been good so far.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, cool. Can we move on to a slightly different topic? So building faith in your family, you know, in your teenagers. I mean, we're all Christadelphians here. You know, we have a strong faith that says, you know, I want my children to grow up to know God and to love Him with all their heart. What are your thoughts on bringing up teens in particular to have that faith, to take on that family faith that I know you guys have got strongly?
Well, it's fair to say, Robert, that's really the ultimate goal, isn't it? To bring your kids into a love of the Lord. That's what we're aiming for. We want to see them in the kingdom, all of that sort of thing. Sadly, you know, when they get older, doesn't always happen for whatever reason, but that's the goal you want to have. So as I said a bit before, what we try and do is we try and show them that initially that we've tried to show them that the truth is important to us, and so we attend everything, you know, Sundays to the meeting, when Thursday night here down in Riverton to the Bible classes, and we made a point of taking them to the Bible schools, and you know, so that they would develop good friendship bases right throughout the country, you know.
Yeah.
Taking them to the Bible schools was very important for us. We're in the Deep South, and they needed to learn that the world was wider and that there were other people who thought the same way we did about the truth. So going to the Bible schools gave them that grounding. I was talking to Richard about it the other day. I actually asked him a couple of these questions and thought, what he thought. And he said going to the Bible schools was the best thing we could have done. And then to the youth conferences, taking to the youth conferences and encouraging those sort of things. Over here, there's a reasonable size group of young people, not a lot necessarily in the older kids age group, and so they didn't necessarily develop a lot of friends down here that could help them into the kingdom. So going to the Bible schools was huge. And he said to me that even having 3 or 4 friends, it didn't matter where they were in the world. When they met up at youth conferences or met up at Bible schools, it was like they hadn't seen each other. They'd not had any time away, and it was just brilliant for them.
Yeah.
From a faith point of view, there were some small things that we think are fairly important. One is don't allow them to make the choice not to come. Encourage them as much as possible to be there. So homework, well, they're often on their phones, they're often on playing or doing whatever they want to do, and then suddenly they don't want to go to Bible class because they've got homework to do. Well, that's your problem. You have to organise that yourself. You need to be at Bible class. So we tended to
Bible class is priority.
Pardon?
So Bible class is priority then.
Bible class was the priority. Meeting was the priority. Sunday school was the priority. Youth group was the priority. Yes, youth circle was the priority. So those were the priorities. One other thing we would never have done ourselves is that we would never use going to an ecclesial event as a punishment. So you can't go because you've been naughty. Yep. It's always where you will be going, and we will deal with your naughtiness later on. But that's what we're going to do. So that was huge for us, was the Bible schools. And the other thing that we did all the time was we talked about what we believed, and a lot of that was around critical thinking. So some of you may know that for a while I was very heavily involved with theistic evolution, for example. So I would go through and and read up a lot of stuff. And then I would discuss that with the children. I'd say to them, have you read? Have you thought? What do you think about this? And so they learned a lot of what I was thinking. Sometimes they'd be interested, sometimes not so interested, but they got to hear it anyway. And so we would discuss all these things, and I'd ask them what they thought. And
to think about it.
Yeah,
you know?
and to see what they critically could think about stuff like that. So they learned to critically think, and then they came to the conclusion often themselves that the Bible made more sense.
Yeah.
And the other thing is developing friendship bases as much as possible in the meeting, if they can. You are who your friends are. This is what I was saying to you the other day. Friendships are really important. If your kids, if all of their friends are at school, and especially if you've got the wrong kind of friends, if they're into drugs and drink and all of that sort of thing, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle big time. So it's really important as much as possible to try and encourage their friendship bases to stay within the ecclesia if possible. And as we said, especially nowadays with the likes of, all the electronic media communications, Facebook, you name it, it's all there, WhatsApp. They can keep in touch with people fairly easily all over New Zealand that they meet at Bible schools and keep their friendships up that way as well. So we believe that's important.
And as another consideration on that, it's not just about what your friends can do for you. That was hugely on our list as well. It's what you can do for other people. So you need to look out for the other younger and older members of the meeting. You need to make sure you talk to whatever age group you can. You need to look out for those who are unsettled or unhappy or feeling out of things, and you need to include them in as much as you possibly can. I mean, that's a learning process, and we don't always get that right. But if thinking about other people, you're not constantly thinking about yourself.
Takes a lot of practice, but yeah, it's just important as having friends, as being a friend.
Yeah, definitely. Just recently with all of this, go to meetings / Facebook, different types of things that we've been doing. You'll get into a situation where you've got a lot of young people in our CYC, and it gets a wee bit clicky, that the ones that talk a lot and chat amongst themselves, and then you'll see perhaps the less more introverted types just sit in the background and watch on. And we've said it's quite important to the kids, to teenagers, that to our kids at least, that they try and include or mention or talk to, some of the younger ones, some of the ones that are less likely to, to talk or they're a bit shy to speak into the microphone, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's cool. And I hope if there's any teenagers listening, you take note of that. At CYC on Saturday, make sure you talk to people who are looking a little bit left out.
Yeah, come make the time and effort. If your kids are thinking about other people and trying to be good friends, then they will be better friends themselves, and they're good friends. And the other thing, of course, is you have to be honest with your children. Don't try and make a rosy picture of what the meeting is like or what the world is like, because when they hit bad stuff, they won't cope so well with it. They've got to understand that humans are humans and we all make mistakes. You've got to sympathize when they're going through a bad spot with a friend and then help them through it so that they can come out the other side and still be positive. But you don't whitewash it or try to pretend that the ecclesia world is perfect, because it isn't.
And the fact is that there are also winners and losers in life, Some people are going to appear to do better than other people, and people have different capabilities as well. So you try and bring them up understanding that if you do the best that you can, that's what God wants of you.
Yeah. So just before we turn it over to questions, can we touch on briefly on what you've done with your family to encourage enjoyment of Bible reading?
Yeah.
Oh, we beat them.
You asked this one last week. Bible readings are always, if you do it too long with your kids, they'll get bored stiff. You've got to try and balance things the way that you can. And our family here, it's more difficult now. We don't have the ease of young teenagers where they just come home and they do their homework and you can just get on with dinner and do things. And we've got kids that are out working late at night. We've got kids that are out visiting people late at night. We have, into the evening, and people kids that are working at whatever hours or doing study for Polytech.
Actually,
So
you should tell that story about when you were young. When Cindy was, this is an example of what not to do with the readings. When she was young, she would go to Prins' place down in Adelaide, and on the Sunday afternoon they'd go around, and they were pretty close to the Glenelg beach, just over the road from it, in fact. And every time the father would say, right, let's do the readings. 3.5 hours later, on a beautiful day, on Sunday afternoon,
we'd be itching to go, and we weren't able to go.
Consequently, they just grew to hate it.
So it kind of puts you off doing the readings. So what we found that works for us is a combination of things. We'll often, you can have audio Bibles, so we'll often do 2 readings in the audio Bible and then sit down and do the 3rd one together. But lately what we've done, because of our varied lifestyles here, is we've got an app called, you can go onto your website, and it's just called bible.com, and you can get the app that's from that onto your phone, and you can set up a group. We set up a group readings for most of the people in the house, and they can tick off the reading. So it's Robert Roberts' reading chart, set it off at the beginning of the year with the group. They read it. Sometimes they'll listen to it on their way to Polytech, or they'll listen on the way to work. They've mostly kept up to it. You can ask questions on the chats as well. You've got a daily chat area for you to write questions or to make comments, so they'll do that as well. Or we might just say, where are you at the readings and what have you got out of the readings, and we'll discuss some of those things. So that's one way we've found that works for us right at this present moment of time.
I just put the link up on the chat thing, so if anyone wants to get on there and check that out, it'll be well worthwhile, I think. I had a look at that this afternoon. You can send it through. Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah, it's really good. You've got the different versions and it's all audio, but setting up a group, it's a little finicky in some ways, but it's pretty good to do.
It works well.
Cool. Oh, thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you found the episode helpful. Don't forget, most of these episodes are also available as videos on our video channel, cdvideo.org. So head over and take a look. If you have any comments or questions or suggestions, please get in touch or leave us a voice message. We love to hear your feedback. You can email us at btf@cdvideo.org. If you enjoyed the episode, then please share it with others. Until next time, may God bless you in your studies and your walk towards God's kingdom. Amen.